From the beginning of the World Series, there have been great playoffs, mild playoffs, controversial playoffs, but out of all of them, there's one postseason that is the most interesting, the most important, the greatest postseason of them all. First, we introduce our participants, the Boston Red Sox. In 1986, the Red Sox were in the middle of a 67-year championship drought, and during that drought, there were many opportunities to hoist the trophy. But 86 felt special to Boston fans, especially when your team was led by a historic MVP season from rookie pitcher Roger Clemens, and really solid years from future Hall of Famers Wade Boggs and Jim Rice. And all of them were on the top 7 of the MVP list. This year represents the hope to break that bad spell of other teams that couldn't in the past, like 67, 75, and 78. The California Angels, as they were known at the time, were relatively new to the league. This was their 25th year in existence, and only the 3rd year in the playoffs. To them, a World Series appearance is something that's never happened in their history, and want to make that happen here. They are led by a bunch of solid veteran players, but they weren't stars necessarily. Instead, the Halos had superstars of the past, like Reggie Jackson and Don Sutton, and quality contributors like Brian Downing and doerksen. Next, we have the now hated but previously enjoyable franchise of the Houston Astros. Similarly to the Angels, they had never been to the World Series before, and this was only the 2nd time they've ever been to the postseason. Their pitchers were the stars of the story. The Ryan Express himself, Nolan Ryan, a very solid pitcher, and Bob Nepper, and Cy Young winner of 1986, Mike Scott. The Astros clinched their NLCS title with a no-hitter from Scott. That was very memorable, and still is to this day. And then we have the Mets. The Mets were a team that dominated the regular season with 108 wins. This team was full of veterans like Gary Carter and Keith Hernandez. Yet, there were also many players that were young stars like Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry. The 1986 Mets were also known to have many fights and brawls, and there were also a lot of drugs that were consumed in 86, and overall in all of those 80s Mets teams. Nevertheless, they were heading to the playoffs, with their franchise only winning one World Series championship in their history, and they are hopeful to repeat that history here. And now, to the games. In Game 1, Roger Clemens and Mike Witt towed the mound as each team's ace and coming in 1st and 3rd in the AL Cy Young Award. And the game started as a good duel, until it wasn't. With 2 outs in the 2nd, the Angels rallied for 4 runs, and another in the 3rd. And from then on, the game was pretty much over, with Mike Witt pitching into the 6th inning with a no-hitter and neutralizing the Boston offense to just 1 run en route to an 8-1 victory. The next game was the complete opposite, with Boston taking the Angels to the woodshed with 9 runs scored against only 2. And of the 9 Red Sox runs, 6 were tallied in the 7th and 8th inning. And now the series is tied at 1 and going to California. And in California, the quality of play picks up with 3 amazing games. In Game 3, the pitching matchup was between Piratas de Quebradillas legend John Candelaria and Oil Can Boyd. Yes, you heard that right. There was a guy that was called Oil Can Boyd. Well, both pitched well in this game. with each pitcher going into the 7th inning with allowing just 1 run, and the game was tied until the Angels broke it open against Boyd with home runs by Dick Schofield and Gary Pettis to open the score to 4-1. That was until Boston came back with 2 runs on their own in the 8th to make it 4-3, but California came in with an insurance run and were able to finish it out 5-3. With now Boston going down in the series, they needed their MVP to step up and bring them an ace performance in Game 4. And that's exactly what they got. The 9th inning has come, and Boston is up 3-0, and they only need 3 outs to tie the series. But the Angels had other ideas other than just roll over and die. Doerksen is up first and rips one to left center for the first halo run of the evening. And after a quick round out, 2 consecutive hits were produced. This was enough for Clemens to be pulled for a total of 134 pitches in between 3 games of rest, after throwing 143 in Game 1. Against new pitcher Calvin Schiraldi, the 9th-hole hitter for California, Gary Pettis, hits a fly ball that initially had a chance to be out, but Jim Rice misjudges the ball and runners are at 2nd and 3rd with 1 out, and it's 3-2 Boston. Following this, the Red Sox manager John McNamara decided to intentionally walk the next batter to force a double play situation, and at first it seemed to work with a strikeout of Bobby Grich, putting situations with bases loaded and 2 outs. Boston is leading 3-2 and needed 1 more out to tie the series. And at the plate came Brian Downing. He was thinking of ending the game with 2 wild hacks, quickly getting the count to 0-2. And after laying one up in the strike zone and the Red Sox being 1 strike away from ending it, a hit by pitch occurs. Boston had blown the game, and an old foe at the plate in Reggie Jackson was eager to end it. But he grounded out and the inning was over. 2 extra innings we go. Nothing happened in the 10th and top of the 11th. Yet, in the bottom half, the Angels got a runner on base and quickly bunted him to 2nd. McNamara decided again to intentionally walk the batter to set up the double play. Nonetheless, Bobby Grich wanted to redeem himself from the last at-bat when he struck out with the bases loaded, and he did just that.
Fouled into trouble, which was a breaking ball, but he got it over to Bobby. Ripped into left field down the line for a base hit. Narron around third, coming in, and the Angels go up 3-1.
After Boston being 1 strike away, they failed in tying the ALCS, and now California leads the series 3-1. With 1 win from the World Series. California is in full cruise control with back-to-back clutch wins, and their ace, Mike Witt, is on the bump with full rest against a Red Sox team that is fighting for their lives. In this game, Boston started the party with a 2-run homer, but the Angels came right back with a run of their own with a Bob Boone solo shot to cut the lead in half. And in the 6th, they got the lead with a Bobby Grich 2-run shot that barely got out of the park with an assist via Dave Henderson's glove. Additionally, they put 2 more runs on the board in the 7th to make their lead 5-2. And while all of this is happening, Mike Witt is shoving with 8 solid innings of 2-run ball and has a chance to take the Halos to the World Series by himself entering the 9th inning. Bill Buckner began the inning with a C9 single up the middle to begin to build up trouble, but there was a strikeout afterwards to mitigate it a bit. Yet, Tom Baylor emptied the bases with a tank to get a 5-4 score and officially get to clenched butthole time for both fan bases. Mike Witt is still pitching and gets the 2nd out of the 9th with a pop out, and the Angels are 1 out away from clinching the pennant. But with 123 pitches logged into his arm and a lefty batter who previously hit a home run in this game. Manager Gene Mock decided to pull his ace for a more favorable matchup in a lefty reliever. Well, the next batter is hit by a pitch, and by the first one nonetheless. Mock has to make another change and bring in Donnie Moore for a righty and hopefully end it. Dave Henderson comes to bat with only one mission: not to draw a walk, not to extend the inning, but to hit one as long as possible. First pitch, just low. Second pitch, low strike. Third pitch, swing and a miss, strike 2. The Angels are one strike away from the World Series, and they can almost taste it. Fourth pitch, low and away, 2-2. Fifth pitch, just fouled. Sixth pitch, foul straight back on a pitch down the pipe, and Moore has to be careful. Seventh pitch,
To left field and deep and down he goes back and it's gone! Unbelievable! You're looking at one for the ages here.
from down 3 in the ninth, the Red Sox have rallied to score 4 runs and now lead the game 6-5. Quick out got the Angels out of the inning, and they are up to bat to try to tie the game or maybe even more. Bob Boone got the bottom of the half started with a rip up the middle, and a bunt afterwards moves the runners to second with Rob Wilfong up to bat.
Hit sharply by Barrett for a base hit. Evans can throw. Jones is coming home. The throw home is there. No, he's safe.
After a single and a walk, the bases are loaded with 1 out, and a Sensei fly ball couldn't get the potential clinching run on the board, and it's 2 outs. Rich up next, lines 1 softly, and the game continues to extras. In the top of the 10th, a double play neutralized the Red Sox threat, and in the bottom, Gary Pettis hits one to the wall and it almost ended it, but just couldn't quite get it over the wall, and the game goes to the 11th. Baylor and Evans get on with no outs, and a Geltman bunt that was meant to advance the runners got the batter on first with an infield hit, and Dave Henderson is coming up to bat again.
And it's drilled to the gap in left center field, deep enough to score a run. Pettis makes the catch. Baylor tags. Red Sox lead 7-6.
Next batter is Ed Romero, and he hit it to the wall, but miraculously, Brian Downing caught it and kept it a 1-run game. Wade Boggs grounded out after that, and we got to the bottom of the 11th, Boston up 7-6. Calvin Giraldi came in to pitch, and he struck out the first 2, but then this happened.
Popped up. Here comes Stapleton. Next plane to Boston.
With one of the most wild games in postseason history, Boston survives after being 1 strike away from being eliminated, and they are going home back to Boston. But even after this game, they're still down on the series and have to beat California twice to go to the big dance. Following this series so far, one might think that the next game or 2 will be close, as we've seen. Yet, this is what happened. After being so close to winning the pennant, the Angels would have to wait another 16 years to reach the World Series and win one in 2002. And the Boston Red Sox are first World Series participants. So let's see who is going to be their opponent. The Mets and Astros are a very interesting matchup. And right from the start, the series is showing its face. Mike Scott is unhittable, and this 108 win team cannot do anything about it. And the pitch that he dominates so well is the splitter. This pitch is very effective, but maybe too effective. It's been known that Scott was cuffing the ball to make the pitch drop down even more than it's supposed to. And he even admitted to doing so later after his career was done. To demonstrate, this is a ball he used in the series. Anyways, he was otherworldly in Game 1, with a complete game shutout with 14 strikeouts and only 1 run of support off the bat of Glenn Davis in the third. In Game 2, the Mets batted around Nolan Ryan for 5 runs in a somewhat easy 5-1 win. But the next game won't be so easy to win against. Mets pitcher Ron Darling got the start for them, and he looked rough in the beginning, allowing 4 runs in the first 2 innings. Yet, he was able to go to the next 3 without allowing Houston to score more. All the meanwhile, the Mets couldn't score against Bob Knepper in the first 5 innings. But in the 6th, New York tied the game with 4 runs, capped with a Darryl Strawberry home run. The Astros didn't spend too much time being tied, because in the next half, they would score on a ground ball to give them a 5-4 lead. That, by the way, should have been a double play. New York kept being stifled until the 9th went along, with a lead-up bunt single from the bat of Wally Backman. A pass ball and a flyout occurred to move the runners to second and to bring Lenny Dykstra to the plate. And he did this.
Hit to right. Pass going back. Going back. It's gone.
The Mets now have a 2-1 lead in the CS. But Scott is pitching in Game 4.
That ball is hit high in the air to center field for Billy Hatcher. This should do it. Game is over. Mike Scott has beaten the New York Mets for the 2nd time.
The series is now tied 2-2. For Game 5, the Mets had their ace on the bump, Dwight Gooden, who previously pitched in Game 1 but ran into bad luck with 0 runs of support. On the Astros side, future Hall of Famer Nolan Ryan had the ball. With this pitching matchup and this high of a pressure-packed situation, everyone expected a low-scoring game, with dominant performances from each side. And that's exactly what happened. With one of the most underrated pitching duels in baseball history, Gooden and Ryan went a combined 19 innings, only allowing a run to each side. The game eventually went to 12 innings, and Gary Carter came up to bat with a runner on first and second, and a chance to give the Mets the win.
Up the middle, base hit. Backman turns third. Hatcher's throw, no play. Easy for Backman. Carter wins it with his 2nd hit of the series, and the Mets win the ball game in 12, 2-1.
The Mets have the lead in the series and are 1 win away from the World Series. But they are going back to Houston, and the Astros have a nuclear weapon in their hands that no Met could hit, waiting for them in Game 7. In essence, although they are up 3-2 in the CS, Game 6 is like a Game 7, even though it isn't. So they had every type of motivation to win in 6. And of course, Houston wants to get to game 7. And all of this is dependent on Mike Scott's scuffed splitter. Got that? Alright, let's go to game 6. The Astros came in really hot with 3 runs in the first with RBI hits from Phil Gardner, Glenn Davis, and Jose Cruz. The third pitcher of Houston's three-headed dragon, Bob Nepper, was tasked with the job to keep the Mets at bay, and he was in cruise control from batter 1. Bob went to the 9th with the same lead he had in the first with 3 runs, and this game 6 felt somewhat tame from what it was expected, but the Astros didn't mind the lack of excitement, with being only 3 outs away from a game 7 with Mike Scott on the mound. But things started to change. A triple from Dykstra and a base hit from Mookie Wilson gave the Mets their first run. And with 1 out, T. Fernandez ripped a double to score another one to cut the lead to 1 and chase Nepper out of the game. Dave Smith came in for the save and immediately walked the first 2 that he faced. With the bases loaded, Ray Knight battled to get the tying run across with a sac fly, and at least for the second, the Astros blew the chance to extend the series, but at least came out of the inning with a tie and not a deficit. The bottom of the 9th came and went, and the 10th came and went. The 11th came and went. The 12th and the 13th the same, but in the 14th, things started to change. A leadoff single for Carter and a walk for Darryl Strawberry threatened right away, but a failed bunt keeps runner at first and second. Wally Backman, a player who came in to pitch hit earlier and stayed in the game, hits one into right field. And the throw home went way over the head of the catcher, and the Mets, for the first time, have the lead and are 3 outs away from the pennant. Houston was able to stop the bleeding and get out of the inning with only a 1-run deficit. Jesse Orozco was in for the Mets, and he struck out the first batter, and they are 2 outs away. But Billy Hatcher came to the plate.
Ball is hit hard to the left side, but it's foul.
Woof! That almost tied the game. Thankful for the Mets, that ball went foul.
High in the air, toward the corner, curving, it is home run!
And we are tied again in the 14th inning. Fast forward to the 16th. And the Mets again have a runner on second. And Ray Knight drives the runner home and the lead is 5-4. Yet, are somewhat unsatisfied. New York has seen how they've shown the inability to tack on runs and want more. Additional runs came in on a wild pitch and a hit by Dykstra. The Mets lead was 7-4, going to the bottom of the 16th and again are 3 outs away from the World Series. Even though Houston is down 3 runs, they have no plans of laying down and dying. And with 1 out, they start a rally with a walk, a single, and another single to cut the lead to 7-5. Orozco, still pitching since the 14th, got the 2nd out and are 1 out away. The Astros do not care and add on another run on a Glenn Davis single, and it's 7-6. Orozco, running on fume, has pitched to this point in 4 of the 6 games of the NLCS and is at north of 50 pitches and is trying his damnedest to get the final out. And in the end, this happened.
Struck him out!
After that roller coaster of a game and series, the New York Mets have beaten the Houston Astros and are headed to the World Series to meet the Boston Red Sox. But after 16 grueling innings of live or die baseball, the Mets came into the series running on fumes. While the Red Sox, although playing one more game than New York, won somewhat comfortably in Game 6 and 7. And you could feel the exhaustion right out of the gates in Game 1. Bruce Hertz and Ron Darling were the starters to start the Fall Classic. And they were on. The more the game went along, the more apparent it was that the smallest of mistakes would be the difference between a win or a loss. And at the top of the 7th, The ball went through the legs of the Mets second baseman and allowed the first run to score. And at the finish line, it was the only run to score in this game, with a shutout from Bruce Hertz to a Red Sox lead to start the series. In Game 2, there was no close game, in spite of a great pitching matchup between Dwight Gooden and Roger Clemens. Both pitchers struggled to not give up runs, but Gooden had a much tougher time than Clemens, with 6 runs earned against 3, and Boston showed its offensive might with a 9-3 victory. On the road to 3 games at Fenway Park, the Mets were in trouble in the series, down 2-0, and needed wins desperately to stay in range to shake up the exhaustion from the Astros series with a much-needed day off. With the opposite side having control of the series going home, and they are already tasting the championship that they've been looking towards since 1918. In the next 2 games, the Mets brought out the bats, scoring a combined 13 runs between the games against only 3 from the Red Sox. And just like that, the Mets tied the series at 2. But the Red Sox weren't going to be completely embarrassed at home and took Game 5 behind a complete game by Bruce Hertz again. This leaves the red carpet for Game 6 at the Shea, with a Boston lead at the series and 1 win away from the championship that is 67 years in the making. Even before the beginning of the game, there was some weirdness going around, with a paraglider landing before the first pitch to support the Mets. But the Red Sox were the ones with the early runs, with a first inning Dwight Evans RBI double and a Marty Barrett RBI single to get them a 2-0 lead. But New York came back in the 5th with 2 runs of their own to tie it at 2. A couple of innings later, Boston hit a ground ball for a potential inning-ending double play, but the runner went to steal a base, and he got to second just in time and allowed the Sox to get a 3-2 lead. Roger Clemens pitched in this game, and he pitched well. But once he had to be relieved in the 8th, the Mets got a bit of a relief and got a bit of a rally going with a leadoff hit by Lee Mazzilli and a follow-up bunt that the Red Sox were unable to get an out on, and his first and second with no outs. The Mets bunted again and moved the runners to second and third with 1 out, and Boston then intentionally walked Keith Fernandez to try to force a double play. But that plan didn't work, and Gary Carter lined the 3-0 pitch to left to tie the game at 3. Top of the 9th came and went with a quick inning, but the bottom, not so much, with a leadoff walk and a failed attempt to get the out at second with a bunt that, in my opinion, was out. Yet, it was called safe, and there was first and second with no outs. And Howard Johnson came in as a pinch hitter to bunt the runners to second and third, but whiffs on the first pitch so badly that he decides to not attempt it again and eventually strikes out. The next batter hits a fly ball to the track that would have ended the game if Johnson had bunted successfully, but the runners stay at first and second with now 2 outs. A fly out by Dykstra later, and we are into the 10th inning, still tied at 3. The game at this point is at a standstill, and any mistake could be.
And a drive to left. Going back on it is Mookie Wilson, and this one is gone. Henderson has done it again.
And Boston leads 4-3. After 2 consecutive strikeouts, Wade Boggs hits a double to threaten to add on top of the home run. And then they do, with a rip up the middle to increase the lead 5-3. And this is a score they would have to be content to try and finally win the damn thing. Calvin Schiraldi is in for his 3rd inning of work with a Wally Backman poke job. Keith Hernandez comes next and he hits a screamer right at the center fielder for the 2nd out. And the Boston Red Sox are 1 out away from the championship long awaited to them. And Gary Carter comes out to bat. The kid, as he was known, was the final part of this Met team to make them from a contender to a legit team that could win it all. And he is trying to keep those dreams alive, at least for the moment. And this happened.
Lined into left field, base hit for Carter, and the Mets are still alive.
At this stage of the game, the people in the clubhouse were preparing wraps around the locker for the champagne celebration. and have the championship waiting to be lifted by the Red Sox. But the Mets are still alive for the moment, and one swing away from tying it. Kevin Mitchell comes to bat and hits a single just in front of the center fielder, and we are officially in clenched butthole time. And they are still 2 outs, but with 2 runners on board. Great Knight is the next batter, and quickly gets to 2 strikes. And Boston is 1 strike away. And then this occurred.
And that's going to be hit into center field, base hit. Here comes Carter to score, and the tying run is at third in Kevin Mitchell.
And now the game is 5-4, with runners on the corners and still 2 outs. It's Mookie Wilson's time to try to keep the Mets alive, but he has to do it against a new pitcher in Bob Stanley.
And here's Mookie. Fouled off. 1 ball, 1 strike. Ball 2. Fouled away, 2-2. Fouled away again. Fouled away. And it's going to go to the backstop. Here comes Mitchell to score the tying run, and Ray Knight is at second base.
The game is 5-5, and the Mets are still alive. Now, the clubhouse workers are hurrying to get everything out and leave no trace of anything being here. But Wilson is still batting with a tie and a runner on second.
3-2 to Mookie Wilson, and he pops it in the air foul off to the right. Gedman coming over. He will not have a play. Line drive foul. So the winning run is at second base with 2 out. 3-2 to Mookie Wilson. Little roller up along first. Behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
Bill Buckner had been dealing with bad knees and a torn Achilles all playoffs long. And the only reason he was still there was because the Red Sox manager, John McNamara, wanted him to celebrate after recording the 3rd out. For the longest time, everyone remembered this play as the blunder that blew the game, but the quote-unquote wild pitch was the one that actually gave up the lead. When Buckner made that error, the game was already blown. But thankfully, with time, people have understood this fact more and more. But we still have Game 7 to be played. Ron Darling and Oil Can Boyd were scheduled to start for the win or go home matchup, but there was a rain delay, and that allowed Boston to switch from Boyd to Bruce Hertz, who has been great this postseason. Reeling from the Game 6 loss, this postponement of a day could have affected the Sox in all sorts of ways, but early on, it looked like a positive one, with early runs to start the game, and all of a sudden, they have a 3-0 lead. But in Game 7s, anything can happen. And the Mets, like they've done all year and postseason long, are starting to chip away again. We are now into the 7th, and the Mets are not content with just a tie. They want it all. Now, New York is in the driver's seat. But in the 8th, Boston is not letting them get away too far, with 2 runs on their own of the bat of Dwight Evans to keep it at 1-run deficit. And this seesaw of a postseason just keeps on doing it. But as quickly as Boston answered to the New York rally, the Mets do the same again.
High drive into deep right field. Evans back at the wall. Gone.
Darryl Strawberry was 0 for 12 before that blast and hadn't hit much of anything this series, to the point that back in Game 5 in Fenway, every Red Sox fan was mocking him for his troubles, shouting, "Darryl, Darryl." I suppose this was a nice payback to potentially put the final nails in the coffin. Yet, New York didn't have 100% confidence that 2 runs was enough and got another run across from the pitcher Jesse Orozco. The Mets had to be content with the 3-run lead they added, and hope is enough for the seesaw to not sway again. And this happened.
Got him.
This postseason was wild, inconceivable, abnormal, crazy, and any adjective you can throw at it. But for me, it was not just crazy, but important. Baseball has a long history of crazy things that have happened. But the reason 1986 was different was because there was a before and after. I think that this postseason is not just the most memorable postseason of all time, but marks a separator between the modern idea of baseball and pre. There were many moments of craziness in each series we had, and this is not the norm. We as baseball fans are lucky we have 2 or 3 moments of truly insane moments during a postseason. But 1986 had it all the time, and the craziness never seemed to stop until the final out. And this is why 1986 is and always will be the craziest postseason ever. Thank you so much for being here, and if you like this video and want more like these, make sure to like and sub, and hopefully see you sooner rather than later. Peace.